The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Welcome back to the Nova Society, a space where dialogue deepens understanding and civic responsibility comes to life. I'm Dr. Mark Bound, joined by our regular panel, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon. Together, we'll unpack the stories that matter most, exploring the headlines, the history, and the big ideas shaping today's conversations. Let's dive in and hear what the panel has for us today.
So today, we are stepping into a week so packed with developments that it feels like the news cycle is running on fast forward. The messages pouring into our inbox made one thing clear, that people are trying to make sense of a lot at once. There's the uproar surrounding Trump's recent tweet directed at Iran, the unexpected shift during yesterday's widely discussed Taco Tuesday moment. We're recording this on Wednesday, April 8th, and the renewed attention on that 10-point peace plan. I thought it was 15 points. Now it's 10. A peace plan floated weeks ago that never really left the public conversation. And with all that comes a flood of questions. So what, if anything, has actually been accomplished on the diplomatic front? Will the Strait of Hormuz reopen? It actually isn't closed technically, but it's closed to some people and open to some with a $2 million toll. How does all this intersect with ongoing concerns about Iran's nuclear program? And if, as some officials have claimed, Iran's military capabilities have been severely reduced, why does the conflict appear far from over? So even among people who have historically supported Trump, there's been a noticeable rise in commentary questioning his recent decision-making, with some voices publicly invoking the 25th Amendment. Analysts are debating whether this moment represents a broader shift in the American political mindset or simply a spike in tensions during an already volatile period. So we're going to break it all down, or at least we're going to try what happened, why it matters, and how people across the country are reacting to it. I don't know if we're going to be making any of our infamous or notorious predictions about what might happen next. My concern is that Trump's not going to drop it. I was surprised, actually, when there was any discussion and any agreement, because I was amazed that Iran would even sit down seriously with the United States, given what happened the last time.
Well, first of all, let's understand they haven't sat down with the United States. They've sat down with the Pakistanis. Okay, but right. So let's take the first part first. Let's do that. The tweet directed Iran about completely eliminated a civilization. I think all of us can look at that and say that's totally unhinged. And
absolutely.
And we get it. And now, yes, there is Taco Tuesday. He backed down. And the 10-point plan, which is basically the same plan that was floated, 4 weeks ago. And we also must remember with that, we haven't heard a thing out of Iran saying that they've agreed to anything.
True. I have a couple of questions. I thought it was 15 points, so I want to know where the other 5 went. And the other point that I did hear was one reporter said to Trump, asked him specifically, saying that people were pointing out or observing, questioning, and saying, wasn't he mentally ill? He said Trump sort of let that part go and said that more people should be like him. That troubled me.
Why?
Because, well, like with my late partner, who had an ischemic stroke and a huge blood clot in his brain, he did not realize or refuse to understand that he had both receptive and expressive aphasia, which meant that he couldn't understand what people said to him, and what he said did not make any sense. Now, he may have been clear in his own mind, but there was no way to know, because what he said, and he couldn't understand what people said. He'd have a few lucid moments, maybe here and there, but most of the time it was unintelligible. He would say to me that I was cracked. I couldn't speak English. The doctors, the police, everybody else, they were cracked, as he put it. and he was fine.
Okay.
So if Trump thinks that everybody else should be like him, and as he said, the left-wing lunatics, the lunatic, bastards or whatever. I mean, look at it last week. Oh, we don't need the Strait of Hormuz open. We don't use it. Everybody else needs to open it up. And then before it was, well, you better open this up. You whatever it is, the fucking strait, you lunatic bastards, or whatever language he used, which was absolutely just out of place in any professional whatsoever. And remember what Dr. John Gartner said: each day we see this man, executive of this country, is going to be the best day, because each day he's going to fail further and further and further and further. But he thinks that everybody should be like him, non compos mentis. And he can't recognize his own problem.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it's up to other people to stop him. And of course, they're not.
Once again, he made a statement that everybody should be like him. And I'm going to say he's, thinking like him. Okay. That doesn't mean everybody's going to. And that doesn't mean we freak out because he says it. He says a lot of stupid shit. I mean that tweet.
But he doesn't recognize it. But he doesn't recognize it, and the people around him aren't stopping it. And this is what this disconnect is something that I don't understand.
All right.
And
so
something else.
How do you stop him at like 2:00 in the morning from being in his bed with his little phone and sending out a stupid tweet like this? How do you stop him? What, take away his phone?
Yeah. I mean,
really?
But the cabinet. I mean, the cabinet and the other people who presumably are, unless what Dr. Brandy Lee said, and what I've observed. I mean, they could be everyone around him is becoming infected with mental instability themselves. I mean, I don't know where this stops.
Well, I don't either. But the fact is, he's still, whether we like it or not, he's the president of the United States. You cannot take away his phone, whether you like it or not. And there's only so much that they can do. We stick with what we know, and that is that he put out this tweet, which in my mind signaled a chance, basically a plan for genocide. Now, there's some arguments of whether or not that's a war crime. Some people are saying it is. I don't think it is, because only if you carried it out. I mean, you could tweet whatever you want. I think one of the problems that I have with all this is that our foreign policy is being run on True Social. That to me is really a true issue. And again, Taco Tuesday. Yes, he backed down. So all the concerns people have about Trump, the fact is that he's always going to say the same thing. If you've ever noticed, we'll decide that in 2 weeks. So you've always got another 2 weeks to go. So instead of freaking out about what he says, which I simply won't do, the fact is just give it 2 weeks and we'll see what happens. The question really comes down to, and this is the 10-point plan. And the 10-point plan was floated a few weeks ago. But we have him saying, well, Iran agreed to this. But we haven't heard a word out of Iran. And is the Strait of Hormuz open? The answer is no.
I just wanted to ask, I mean, we did bomb Karg Island again, did we not? And we have done bombing again, have we not? Okay. Yes. And so nobody can believe anything that Trump says. So it doesn't have to be 2 weeks. No, it isn't. But so... I mean, it doesn't have to be 2 weeks. I mean, before it was ask me about Venezuela in whatever time, and the next thing you know, we've taken Maduro out. So the man is as we know, phenomenally unstable.
What do you want, Brooklyn? You want to sleep at night again? You have to elect another president. Well,
no, I take sleeping pills, so I sleep. Otherwise, I wouldn't, because insomnia runs in my family really badly. So I've had insomnia for decades. So that's another issue. Yeah, go ahead, Scott, please.
A couple of weeks ago, we offered a 15-point plan. Iran immediately rejected it. They offered us the 10-point plan. I have not looked yet to see what the 5 items that they crossed out of the 15-point plan are, but I have a feeling it was obligations that they had that we were imposing on them, that they just went, no, we're not doing that. And they did that 5 times and scratched those 5 things out. This 10-point plan is a capitulation on the part of the United States of America. And it only succeeds in getting the Strait of Hormuz open without any of the other things that we wanted. So, for example, having them offload all their enriched uranium, which Obama accomplished, Trump will not accomplish. Obviously, there's no regime change. They're not going to hold elections and become a democracy. That's not happening. Far from stopping them from being a regional power and projecting power in their region, they are now the most powerful country in the world. Trump did that. And so the 15-point plan contained things that Iran had to do that Trump wanted to impose upon them. All they did was strip them out. Mark, it's just like that moment in the history of the world where Moses comes down with 15 tablets. I've got 15 commandments, 10 commandments. It's exactly that. Okay.
Exactly.
And the 5 things that were on the tablet that ended up crushed around his feet were the 5 that Iran had to do, and they don't have to do them anymore. And Trump has apparently accepted this deal, although the Israelis have not, and they're firing missiles back and forth at one another. As far as what you're saying, Brooke, about what Trump says and how he communicates, there was a moment last week where he made a speech. I forget whether it was the one right before Easter or the one during Easter, where at 9 minutes into the speech, he said, regime change was not our goal. We don't want that. And 7 minutes later at 9:07, the transcript reads, regime change is what we want. It is needed. Same speech, 7 minutes apart. Okay. He completely reversed himself. He doesn't know what he's doing. He is manifestly irresponsible for his own actions. He really does need to be removed from office because he doesn't have any idea. Mark brought up the 2 weeks thing. He's been doing that for a long time now, saying, okay, 2 weeks from we're working on a great healthcare plan. We're going to roll it out in, let's say, 2 weeks. And we never get the healthcare plan. Trump, for his entire life, has lived 5 minutes at a time. And he continues to live 5 minutes at a time. And I'll take care of the next 5 minutes when it comes. And that is really how he is operating right now. And the only difference between him running casinos into the ground and doing what he's doing now is that the entire world is being affected by this. And it's, you can see, as the listeners pointed out, you can see that even longtime backers of him, people who literally worked really hard to put him back into office, have abandoned him now and said, we got a 25th Amendment, this guy. Now, I'm not the expert on the 25th Amendment, but I know it's not happening. And I know that the Republicans are never going to impeach him and never going to remove him from office. So as far as I can tell, until nature takes its course, we are stuck with this guy as our president for the next three years until he's out of office. There's really nothing that any of us can do about it. I mean, the Democrats, I guess my representative here in Connecticut has called out for his 25th Amendment removal. Another congressperson in further out in Connecticut towards Boston, John Larson, has called for him to be impeached. Again, neither one of them is going to happen. The Republicans have to do this, and they're not going to do it because of whatever. I mean, I'm not really sure what's holding it all together at this point. They have to understand that this was a huge embarrassment for the United States.
While we're at this, I want to point out one thing. I was listening to Dr. John Gartner, whom we've had on our program. I don't know if I think he was on the Dean Obadala show. Trump is always talking about, acing this cognitive assessment. Right. At one point, Trump went back and had tests, plural. And Dr. John Gartner was saying that indicates to him that Trump had a battery of tests, cognitive tests. You don't have those tests unless you have failed the test, the original test. And you don't.
These are Trump calls them tests. They're really screenings, right? They'd probably be better categorized as screenings, where you're screening for mental health. and he doesn't have it.
No, you don't. And I've seen the one test that MOCA, the Montreal test, because my late partner, after he had a stroke, took it in the hospital. And I watched it, and I also asked for a copy to look at. And I asked the psychiatrist, what is a normal person's score? There's no such thing as acing. You get a number score. And a normal person will get between 28 and 30 points, and that's all there is. My late partner got a 2 the first time he took it. All right. And one question my late partner was never able to get right. The second time my late partner took the test, by the way, he got a 10. And after that, he refused to take them anymore. And the most difficult question for my late partner that he was never able to do was take this piece of paper in your right hand, fold it in half, and put it on the floor. He could never understand what he was supposed to do. I mean, this is not in any way a challenging cognitive assessment. And I think one reason that Trump has been receiving the same cognitive test repeatedly, in my opinion, although I don't know, is to establish a baseline and to see if he's trending up or down with these. But
Mark,
anyway,
you might want to try this. I memorized the whole test, so hopefully I'll remember that if I ever have to take it. I just memorized the whole thing, and so they can never catch me on it. So you may want to try that for yourself.
Well, and these medical tests. Let me just say this about that: for any doctor or emergency room nurse or paramedic out there knows that you could be dead and you're still going to score a 3 on the Glasgow Coma scale. You still score 3 points. You don't score 0, and you're dead. You would think you would score 0 anyway. And again, he says he keeps taking these tests. We don't really know if they do. Nobody else verifies that stuff. He just says it. And I think a lot of times we put too much into what he says. Now, Scott did bring up a point about the 25th Amendment, and so we'll kind of make this a little clearer. And Section 4 is what we're talking about. And it basically says if the vice president decides the president can no longer perform the duties of his office, he and a majority of the executive cabinet can submit this in writing to Congress. When that happens, the vice president becomes acting president. Now, the president can't disagree, however, and it requires at least a 2/3 of Congress voting that the president is unfit for duty for him to be permanently stripped of his powers. That's where it sits. That's where we sit with that one.
Give me a percentage of what's the chance that anybody is going to do that?
His cabinet, probably 10%.
Okay. What about JD?
I don't know.
What's a majority? Does that mean a simple majority? 51%? And
yes.
how many is that of the cabinet? I don't even know how many people in the cabinet there are at this point, right? Well, I don't know. That means Todd Blanche, who's they're all sycophants. And I put the emphasis on sick offense.
It's probably not quite 10%, but it's probably around there.
Yeah. I would say, gosh.
These people have really nowhere else to go once this job is done.
Now, there's 16 of the cabinet, secretaries of the cabinet. However, cabinet level officials.
Does Marco get 2 votes because he's got 2 roles?
No, he only gets 1 vote. There's 8 of those. So it would be either 9 if you just have the secretaries. It would be 13 if you also include like the director of national intelligence, this director of the CIA, their cabinet level. Whether they're included into that, I'm not sure.
So I want to get back to a point that you made earlier because I think it's really interesting, which is the Easter tweet, I guess it was, or the one a couple of nights ago. During the whole, Israel wrecking Gaza thing, whenever people would bring up to me that they're committing genocide, my answer was always the same. Obviously they're committing atrocious acts of war. Okay. Mm-hmm. Granted, bombing indiscriminately in cities. The Israelis do tend to drop something on the roof of a building before they bomb it to let the people inside the building know that they have to get out. That's been a long-standing practice. I don't know if they did that every single time. I guess if it was a high-value target, they probably took their best shot. But my answer was always the same, was that Israel's intent is not to destroy all the Palestinian people. And so therefore it is not genocide. Trump made clear that he wanted to commit genocide. And if he had followed through on that, there could be no question of his intent because he tweeted it out.
Correct.
He put it out there and said, I don't want to do it, but I have to, I think was the words that he used. And so that removes any kind of question of intent. He intended, or he intends, I mean, it could happen in 2 weeks, to annihilate the entire Persian civilization in the country of the Republic of Iran. And he probably still does that. And there are people who are saying on social media, why are you guys making fun of him? You're just going to goad him into doing it by calling him Taco and stuff like that. It's not my job to say, good job, President. I agree with what you did. You know, that we live in a democracy where thankfully we can say that we oppose the president and criticize him for anything that he does. What he has done, we need to be really clear about this. What he has done is more destructive to freedom and the United States and free people around the world than anything anybody has ever done. He has destroyed the credibility of the United States of America. As I've said 1,000 times now, I keep feeling I say this over and over again. The line from Miller's Crossing: you don't hold elective office in this town. You run things because people run things. When they stop thinking you run it, you stop running it. That's what we have done. We no longer are the most powerful country in the free world. And so the cost of this in the long term is going to be worse than anything anybody else has ever done, because we were the thing that stood between the dictators, the autocrats, the genocidal maniacs, and the rest of the world. There is no reason on earth why Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin or anybody else should hold back doing what they want to do based on their belief that the United States can be counted on to step in and do the right thing, even, as Churchill once put it, only after every other thing has been tried. Right? And we have abdicated the most important position that the United States has ever held in the world, and there will be long-term complications because of this that are going to be disastrous for people all around the world who are sitting there right now and have no idea what's coming down their way, and that they can't count on us to stop it.
Yeah, Scott, no, I agree with you. I've been thinking every time I see the Trump taco, I'm thinking, wait, chickened out from murdering all these people. I would not use that expression because it's...
Well, he did, though. You know what? Why don't we call a spade a spade? That's what he did. He chickened out. As I have read, CENTCOM just said no. And if
I'm hopeful that they simply said, no, we won't do that. It's an illegal order.
I don't know when we're going to find out about that, if we ever find out about it. But I have read on that Hegseth kept firing generals until he could find the people that would carry out his illegal orders, and the Central Command unified said, we're not doing this. And so without CENTCOM, he didn't have a way of following through with his plans. They were not going to go commit war crimes on his behalf. So our generals possibly stepped up. I shouldn't say this with certitude because, frankly, I don't know. Has possibly stepped up and said, we refuse your illegal orders, and we are not going to do this. We are not going to do this for you. And I think that that's an enormously powerful and amazing and great thing if it happened for our military to do. They understood that that their credibility was at stake, that their morality and ethics were at stake, that the Geneva Conventions needs to mean something because they're the ones who are on the front line, and they're the ones who, if you run around like Hegseth had saying, we will give our enemy no quarter, should expect no quarter back. And it's one thing to say that when you're in your cushy office in the Pentagon, but it's another thing to hear that or say it when you're on the ground. And I really do hope that that's exactly what happened, because I was in a bad place yesterday. I was in 3 classes yesterday, live in person, and I don't think I talked about a single thing that I was supposed to talk about in any of them, because this kept coming back to me, and I kept spiraling into it. And I'm looking at these kids, and they're 18, 19, 20 years old. They have no idea what's going on. They don't know. They do not watch the news. They get their news from TikTok, and it's usually about kittens or something like that. And they have no idea what's going on. And I'm trying to explain to them what it is. I even had the unit that we were doing. So I don't teach a ethics class live, or a history or public or political science class. I teach communication courses, and all 3 of my classes this year are decision making in small groups. So I've been modeling getting together in a small group to teach the class, and we use this unit that we're on right now, use the movie 13 Days about the Cuban Missile Crisis to model for them how JFK put together XCOM, which was a committee of smart people, and as RFK puts it in the movie, get a bunch of smart guys in a room, kick them in the ass until they come up with some solutions. And that's exactly what happened in October 1962. I gave them the assignment. They could choose any conflict they wanted that's real or imagined. One of them did yesterday, a terrific new civil war here in the United States, and what the president would have to do with his cabinet or his close military and military, economic, diplomatic advisors to help get through the situation without giving up any of your must-haves, right? There are haves, like to haves, and there are must-haves. And, or as we put it in more academic terms, there's compensatory factors and there are non-compensatory factors. And I pointed out to them yesterday that for JFK, there were 2 non-compensatory factors. One was that he had to get the missiles out of Cuba. And the second one was no World War III. And with those 2 things in place that he had to have, anything else was on the table. And he ended up with a combination of essentially, the quarantine or the blockade, embargo, for one thing, yep. Right? And then the second one was appeasement. Appeasement had a dirty name in America, certainly at that time, because it didn't work in the lead up to World War II. So appeasement was considered something that you would not want to do. But that ended up being the correct solution to this problem. And sometimes it's the last thing that you would think it is that ends up being the best solution for a particular problem.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about the Kennedy situation was that, he gave up the missiles in Turkey, which were at the time outdated, and they were supposed to come out anyway, previous, and they hadn't. So basically, he was appeasing, but he really wasn't giving up much of anything because it was something that had already been decided. So, appeasement.
But he didn't replace them with newer, better missiles.
Correct.
And by the way, we pledged also never to invade Cuba, which at least until now we have lived up to. And the Russians pledged that they were going to keep it quiet, which they did. Because they understood that the president of the United States has to answer to people, and that he can't do anything he wants to do like a dictator does. But Trump, and so my contrast there was, look at what Kennedy did and how that situation turned out, and now look at what Trump has got and how he's going about it. And David Sanger had a piece in the New York Times today. And there's a quote in it that's fantastic, and I just want to read the quote, okay? Because looking at this 10-step plan, he didn't clearly Trump didn't get what he wanted, and so Sanger wrote today in the New York Times, if he fails to get the $900 70 pounds of 60% enriched uranium out of the country, along with far larger quantities of lower enriched nuclear fuel, he will have accomplished less in the $1 billion-a-day war than Mr. Obama accomplished 11 years ago. In that agreement, Iran shipped 97% of its nuclear stockpile out of the country. If he fails to win agreement that Iran will limit the size of its battered arsenals of missiles or the distance they could travel, he will have fallen short on one of his top objectives. And if his talks with the government led by the new supreme leader, which is basically just president, Mustafa Khamenei, who's believed to be recovering from injuries in the bombing that killed his father, end up cementing the new government's authority, he risks selling out the Iranian people. All of that appears to be the case. He has accomplished nothing. The only thing he got was the correction of something that hadn't existed, the closing of the Strait of Hormuz, until he began to interfere in this situation. That's it. That's all he got.
One thing that I think also that at least is important to me is that I don't think that Americans, many Americans at least, understand the perspective of the rest of the world. I mean, if Kim Jong-un were to say, well, I'm just going to take out South Korea, or I'm going to take out whatever, because I feel like it. I mean, he's not doing that. I mean, some people actually in this country support what Trump wants to do, and they can't understand why Europe won't let us use their bases or our bases, as though we're somehow exceptions. And this concept of American exceptionalism, it's in our minds. It does not exist, or at least if it did, it doesn't anymore. And people cannot understand that. I mean, Americans at least, or many Americans, cannot grasp, as you said, Scott, a lot worse is coming that people cannot understand in this country, because we believe that somehow we're beyond reproach still. And again, I keep going back to what Marco Rubio said. Well, they have to deal with us. No, they don't. And the world can certainly view us not as simply something to be ignored, but as an adversary and as a danger with the way that we're behaving. I think that is what is actively happening. We are, I don't know, like a rogue state, I suppose, at this point.
Yeah, I would say.
And other nations look at us, are think that that we're all probably, or many of us at least, are I don't know,
sociopathic,
psychopaths. Yeah, I mean, are just deserving of being plowed under and are dangerous. They would be better off without us entirely. With the way that Trump is behaving, I don't blame them. And still, so many Americans don't understand the perspective of others, and will blame them or blame the Democrats or Biden or somebody else, when the United States, I think, in my view, still inevitably comes to grief because of all this. As you were saying, the consequences are going to be terrible, and they're not going to end when Trump is gone. Go ahead.
Right, but not just for us here in the United States, right? There is people sitting in a town or a city right now in Africa or Asia or someplace like that, where there is some kind of horrible thing about to happen to them, possibly even from their own rulers. And in the past, they could count on us after we've tried everything else, right? I mean, we've seen this before. After we've tried everything else, to avoid going in there and stopping it from happening. Whether it works out in the long run, right? It doesn't always. Libya is a perfect example of that. Obama went in, helped the people overthrow Gaddafi. It has not worked out well for the good people of Libya ever since. But they're probably not much worse off than they were under Gaddafi. Somewhere in the world, there are people who are sitting around going, at least we can count on somebody coming in and rescuing us. Well, we're not there, and we're not going to be able to, and we don't have any credibility. We keep saying that we're going to do something and we don't do it. You can only get, I don't even think my father misunderstood that rule. You don't do the countdown unless you're willing to start throwing hands. After a while, it just doesn't make any sense to do it. We've lost our credibility. There's nothing to stop anybody from doing anything because they know that all they have to do is threaten us enough or turn off the oil. I don't think we've learned any lessons from this. Today there should be a movement in this country. We got to go out and get alternative forms of energy. We can no longer allow, this myth that the Republicans have put on us that we're energy independent is a laugh. It is a joke. Come on, please. Oil is traded globally and we pay the price that the global market tells us to pay. There are 40 members of OPEC Plus. They set the market, not us. And that's the truth. And here's another truth for you people. We don't have any oil. We are free market society. The oil companies are owned by stockholders or independent people or whatever owns the companies, but they do not belong to us. And they do not. Has one oil executive stepped up and said, we're going to lower the price of our oil. We're going to fill up your tank for the good low price of $2 a gallon. No, nobody's doing that. This is capitalism, kids. And we're a capitalist society, and we don't control anything. And what we better learn to do real quick is to put solar panels on our roofs and start digging underground for thermal heat vents and using wind and investing more in wind power and solar, and none of these things are happening. And so we're still going to be 2 weeks from now dependent on oil and crazy dependent on that oil getting through the Strait of Hormuz, which is now going to be have a crazy toll booth on it that didn't exist before, but will from now on.
And we will continue this conversation in our next episode. We hope you'll join us. And that's all the time we have for today's episode. The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We want to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing team, Apple Podcasts, the largest source of podcast and music online, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio, your destination for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. And most importantly, we want to thank you, our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society could not be possible. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing on the platform of your choice. It's easy, it's free, and helps our channel grow. For questions or comments, you can reach us at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So on behalf of Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Scott Gershwer, and all of our production partners here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power of society is knowledge. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you again next time. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, the Phoenix Research Group, an independent research consortium dedicated to providing solutions to social and political issues for NGOs and international government agencies. Through multidisciplinary, nonpartisan, and unbiased research, the Phoenix Research Group advances understanding and practical strategies for complex challenges. The Phoenix Research Group is a division of the Phoenix Research Institute, the producer of the Nova Society podcast.